Good evening, dear listener. Tonight, we embark on a journey unlike any other, stepping through the veil of time into a world where death walks the cobblestone streets and hope flickers like candlelight in the darkness. If you enjoy calm history like this, you can also listen on Spotify or explore history audiobooks on Audible. Both are linked in the description for you. I invite you to close your eyes and imagine waking up not as yourself, but as someone entirely different in a time when survival was never guaranteed. The morning light filters weakly through dirty glass, barely illuminating the cramped chamber where you find yourself awakening. Your body feels different, unfamiliar. The rough woolen dress clinging to your frame tells a story you're only beginning to understand. You are Margaret, a baker's daughter in the year 1348, and outside your window, the city of Winchester is slowly dying. The first sensation that hits you isn't the ache in your back from the straw mattress or the chill seeping through the wooden shutters. It's the smell. Sweet decay mingles with burning herbs and human waste, creating an assault on your senses that makes your stomach lurch. This is the scent of a medieval city in the grip of the Black Death, and it will become as familiar to you as breathing. You swing your legs over the edge of the narrow bed, your bare feet touching cold stone. The chamber is small, perhaps 8 feet square, and shared with your younger sister, who lies still beneath her threadbare blanket. For a terrifying moment, you wonder if she's simply sleeping or if the pestilence has claimed another victim during the night. Relief floods through you as she stirs, coughing softly in her sleep. The wooden stairs creak ominously as you descend to the bakery below. Your father, Thomas, is already at work despite the early hour. His weathered hands knead dough with practiced efficiency, but you notice the tremor that wasn't there a month ago. The plague has aged everyone prematurely, stealing strength and certainty from even the most robust citizens. Your daily routine begins before dawn, as it has for the past 15 years of Margaret's life. The ovens must be lit, the dough prepared, and the day's bread baked before the morning customers arrive. But these are no ordinary times, and your customers are no ordinary people. They are survivors in a world where half the population has already perished. The bellows work as you pump air into the oven's flames, watching the orange light dance across the soot-stained walls. Each loaf of bread you'll bake today represents more than sustenance. It's hope made tangible, proof that life continues even when death seems victorious. Your hands, now calloused and strong from years of labor, work automatically, while your mind struggles to comprehend this new reality. The first customer arrives as the sun climbs higher, casting long shadows through the narrow windows. She's wrapped in a heavy cloak despite the season. Her face was partially hidden by cloth, meant to ward off the evil vapors that many believe carry the disease. Her coins clink on the wooden counter as she purchases her daily bread, but her eyes never meet yours. In a world where a cough can mean death, even the simplest human interactions have become fraught with fear. Margaret's memories flood your consciousness as you serve customer after customer. You remember when the streets were filled with merchants hawking their wares, children playing games in the squares, and the sound of laughter echoing from the taverns. Now the city moves with the deliberate caution of prey animals, every person calculating the risk of each encounter. The bread sells quickly, despite the reduced population. Those who remain alive are desperate for normalcy, for the simple comfort of warm bread that speaks to life continuing, despite the devastation surrounding them. Your father counts the coins with satisfaction, but you see the worry lines etched deeper around his eyes each day. Business is good because competition has been eliminated by death, not because prosperity has returned.
By midday, the heat from the ovens becomes oppressive, but you dare not open the windows wide. The city's air carries more than just an unpleasant odor now. It carries whispers of contagion, rumors of new outbreaks, and the constant underlying fear that shapes every decision. You've learned to breathe shallowly when strangers approach, to keep your distance even from familiar faces. Your sister Emma descends the stairs, her pale face a constant reminder of how quickly health can deteriorate in these times. She's only 13, but her eyes hold the gravity of someone much older. The plague has stolen childhood from an entire generation, replacing innocent games with survival skills and carefree laughter with cautious whispers. The afternoon brings its own challenges as you venture into the streets to purchase flour from the miller. The cobblestones are uneven beneath your leather shoes, worn thin from daily use. Every step requires careful attention, not just to avoid stumbling, but to navigate around the human waste that flows in open channels down the center of each street. Winchester's narrow lanes twist and turn like a maze designed by madmen. Buildings lean precariously toward each other, their upper stories nearly touching overhead, blocking out much of the precious sunlight. In this perpetual twilight, shadows hide both opportunity and danger. You've learned to walk quickly but quietly, drawing as little attention to yourself as possible. The marketplace that once bustled with activity now resembles a ghost town with scattered survivors. Vendors who remain alive charge premium prices for their goods, knowing that desperation makes people willing to pay almost anything for necessities. Your family's bakery provides some insulation from these inflated costs, but flour, salt, and other ingredients still require careful budgeting. The miller's shop stands at the edge of the city, where the plague's impact seems somehow less immediate. Perhaps it's the open spaces around the mill, or maybe it's simply that death feels less oppressive when you can see the horizon. The great wooden wheel turns slowly in the stream, grinding grain with the same methodical persistence that has sustained communities for generations. Your transaction with the miller is conducted with the formal politeness that has replaced genuine warmth in most social interactions. He measures your flour carefully, checking the weight twice before accepting payment. Trust has become a luxury few can afford when survival depends on every transaction being fair and accurate. The return journey to the bakery takes you past the cathedral, its towering spires reaching towards heaven like stone prayers for deliverance. The massive doors stand open, revealing flickering candles and the shadows of kneeling figures within. Some seek divine intervention for their own health, while others pray for the souls of those already lost. The constant murmur of Latin prayers creates a backdrop of desperate hope that follows you through the streets. Children are rare sights in these plague-ravaged streets, but when you do encounter them, their haunted expressions break your heart. They move with the careful weariness of adults, having learned too young that the world is dangerous and unpredictable. Their games, when they play at all, often involve elaborate rituals meant to ward off disease or honor the dead. Evening approaches with the same reluctant pace that characterizes all activities in this dying city. The sun sets early behind the tall buildings, plunging the streets into premature darkness that feels symbolic of the broader shadow cast over society. Candles and oil lamps begin flickering to life in windows, each small flame representing another household that has survived another day. Your family gathers for the evening meal, a simple affair of bread, cheese, and whatever vegetables remain fresh enough to eat safely. Conversation is subdued, focusing on practical matters rather than dreams or aspirations. The plague has taught everyone to live one day at a time, making long-term planning seem both pointless and dangerous. The bread you eat tastes different somehow, infused with the knowledge of how precious and precarious life has become. Each bite represents ingredients that were dangerous to obtain, fuel that was expensive to burn, and time that might have been better spent in isolation. Yet the act of eating together as a family provides comfort that transcends these practical concerns. Your father shares news gathered from customers throughout the day, carefully filtering information to protect Emma from the most disturbing details. Reports of new outbreaks in neighboring villages, stories of abandoned homes where entire families have perished, and rumors of miracle cures that inevitably prove false. The flow of information in a medieval city relies entirely on human contact, making every piece of news potentially contaminated with more than just falsehood. As darkness settles fully over Winchester, you help prepare the bakery for tomorrow's work. Dough must be prepared and left to rise overnight, ovens banked to maintain proper temperature, and ingredients measured for the morning's baking. These routine tasks provide structure and purpose in a world where both have become increasingly scarce. The night sounds of the city tell their own story of survival.
Conversation reveal the source of their anxiety. Reports have arrived from London describing a new variation of the pestilence, one that strikes more quickly and shows different symptoms. Whether these stories represent truth or the endless rumors that circulate like poisonous fog through medieval communities, they create palpable tension that affects everyone's behavior. Your sister Emma proves invaluable as you begin preparations for Master Geoffrey's elaborate order. Her small hands are perfect for shaping delicate decorative elements, and her artistic eye helps create patterns that transform simple bread into something approaching art. Working together provides a welcome distraction from the grim realities surrounding your daily existence, allowing both of you to focus on creation rather than survival. The specialized ingredients required for the funeral feast necessitate another journey into Winchester's dangerous streets. This time, your destination is the spice merchant's stall near the cathedral, where exotic seasonings command prices that would have seemed impossible before the plague reduced supply chains to desperate improvisation. Cinnamon from distant lands, honey from local beekeepers who risk their lives tending hives, and salt preserved in carefully guarded stores all carry premium costs. The spice merchant, a wizened man whose survival seems miraculous given his advanced age, conducts business with the methodical care of someone who understands that mistakes can be fatal. His scales are checked twice for accuracy. His goods were examined carefully for signs of contamination or adulteration. Trust may be scarce, but verification provides some measure of security in transactions where both parties risk exposure to disease. Your route home takes you past the city's main well, where a small crowd has gathered around a traveling preacher. His voice carries across the square as he delivers a sermon about divine judgment and earthly purification. Some listeners nod in agreement, finding comfort in explanations that make sense of senseless suffering. Others maintain the skeptical distance that experience has taught them to preserve around anyone claiming special knowledge about the plague's meaning or purpose. The preacher's message mingles hope with terror in equal measures, promising salvation for the faithful while warning of greater tribulations to come. His words reflect the spiritual confusion that grips communities where traditional religious explanations seem inadequate to explain the scale of devastation. Churches remain important gathering places, but their role has evolved from centers of celebration to repositories of grief and desperate prayer. Returning to the bakery, you discover that the afternoon has brought an unexpected visitor. Father Benedict from the local monastery stands in earnest conversation with your father, his brown robes marking him as one of the few religious figures still actively ministering to Winchester's surviving population. Many clergy have either fled to safer locations or succumbed to the plague themselves, making those who remain particularly valuable to their communities. Father Benedict's presence signals both honor and concern for your family. The monastery has noticed your consistent survival and continued productivity during these troubled times, marking you as potentially valuable allies in maintaining community stability. However, his visit also carries implicit expectations about charity and service that could strain your family's already limited resources. The priest's request proves both reasonable and challenging. The monastery seeks a regular supplier for their daily bread, offering steady payment in exchange for guaranteed delivery regardless of circumstances. This arrangement would provide economic security, but would also require maintaining production even during the most dangerous periods of plague outbreak. Your father's acceptance commits the family to a level of exposure and responsibility that significantly increases both opportunity and risk. Evening preparations for the funeral feast consume every available moment and surface in the bakery. The elaborate loaves require careful timing to ensure they finish baking simultaneously, while the decorative elements demand constant attention to prevent burning or collapse. Your hands, already tired from the day's regular work, ache as you shape intricate patterns that must remain perfect despite the physical demands of prolonged labor. The heat from multiple ovens operating at capacity transforms the bakery into a furnace that rivals the legendary fires of purgatory described in Father Benedict's sermons. Sweat drips constantly from your forehead, requiring frequent wiping to prevent contamination of the carefully prepared dough. Your woolen dress clings uncomfortably to your body, but removing layers would expose skin to potential burns from the oven's radiant heat. Your sister Emma's stamina proves remarkable as she maintains focus on delicate detail work despite the oppressive conditions. Her youthful energy provides essential support for completing the elaborate order within the promised timeline. But you notice signs of fatigue that concern you. Dark circles under her eyes and a persistent cough that might signal nothing more serious than flour dust in her lungs, or might indicate the beginning of something far worse. The night's work continues well past normal bedtime, illuminated by oil lamps that cast dancing shadows across the bakery's walls. These moving patterns create an almost hypnotic atmosphere that helps maintain concentration during repetitive tasks. However, the extended exposure to lamp smoke adds another layer of irritation to eyes already strained by close work and excessive heat. Master Geoffrey's funeral feast represents more than a simple business transaction in this plague-ravaged world. It symbolizes the human desire to honor the dead with dignity and beauty, even when death has become commonplace and resources are scarce. Creating something beautiful for such a purpose provides meaning that transcends mere economic survival, connecting your work to the deeper human need for ritual and remembrance. The final loaves emerge from the ovens just as dawn begins to lighten the eastern sky, their golden crusts gleaming like treasures in the lamplight. Each piece represents hours of careful labor and precious ingredients transformed into something that will provide both nourishment and comfort to people gathering to mourn and celebrate a life lost to the plague. Your exhaustion feels worthwhile when you survey the completed order arranged on wooden boards for delivery. Sleep becomes a luxury postponed as you prepare for another full day of regular bakery operations. The funeral feast order has been completed successfully, but your family's survival still depends on maintaining normal bread production for daily customers. Your father's weathered face shows pride in the night's accomplishment, but also concern about sustaining such intensive work periods without compromising health or safety. The early morning delivery to Master Geoffrey's household provides your first glimpse into how the wealthy attempt to maintain normalcy during these extraordinary times. His stone house, larger and more secure than most Winchester dwellings, shows signs of careful maintenance despite the general decay affecting the city. Servants still tend the grounds and maintain appearances, though their numbers have clearly been reduced by death or departure. Master Jeffrey's gratitude for your family's efforts carries genuine emotion that transcends the formal politeness typical of commercial relationships. His wife's death represents not just personal loss, but another severing of the social connections that once bound communities together. The funeral feast becomes an attempt to recreate, however briefly, the sense of shared celebration that made life meaningful before the plague transformed existence into mere survival. Your return journey through Winchester's morning streets reveals a city slowly awakening to another day of uncertainty and cautious hope. Vendors begin setting up their reduced stalls, customers emerge from homes to conduct essential business, and life continues its stubborn persistence despite overwhelming odds. The bread you carry for your own family's breakfast represents both sustenance and a symbol of humanity's refusal to surrender to despair. The day ahead promises new challenges as regular customers expect their daily bread. While your family recovers from the previous night's intensive labor, your hands, cramped and sore from hours of detailed work, must continue the essential tasks that maintain your family's survival. Each loaf shaped and baked becomes another small victory against the forces of chaos and death that threaten to overwhelm medieval life. Winchester's bells begin their daily calling, marking time in a world where each hour survived represents an achievement worthy of gratitude. The bronze voices carry across the city's narrow streets and crowded buildings, reaching into every corner where human life persists despite impossible odds. Change. The cathedral's morning prayers drift through your window as you begin another day's work. But today brings whispers of something that make even hardened survivors pause in their daily routines. A merchant caravan has arrived from the northern territories, carrying tales that seem too fantastical for belief, yet too consistent to dismiss entirely. The merchants speak of villages where the dead walk again, not as blessed resurrections,
rising from shallow graves driven by an insatiable hunger that no earthly food can satisfy. Your rational mind rejects such impossibilities, but Margaret's memories contain folklore about restless spirits and unquiet graves that suddenly seem less like superstition and more like warnings. Your father dismisses these stories with the weary skepticism of someone who has witnessed enough real horrors to have no patience for imaginary ones. Yet you notice how his hands shake slightly as he measures flour, and how his eyes dart toward the shuttered windows more frequently than usual. Even the most practical survivors have learned that in times like these, the line between possible and impossible becomes dangerously thin. The morning's customers arrive earlier than normal, their conversations filled with urgent speculation about the merchant's tales. Some speak of preparing additional defenses against threats that conventional weapons cannot address. Others argue for immediate evacuation from Winchester, claiming that cities become death traps when supernatural forces join natural pestilence in devastating human communities. Your sister, Emma, listens to these discussions with the wide-eyed fascination of youth, confronting concepts that exist beyond her experience. Her questions probe the boundaries between death and unlife, between Christian doctrine and pagan fears that Christianity never fully eliminated. You find yourself struggling to provide answers that offer comfort without encouraging dangerous curiosity about matters best left unexplored. The baker's routine continues despite mounting anxiety throughout the city. Dough rises according to natural laws that remain unchanged regardless of supernatural threats. Ovens heat to temperatures that transform grain into sustenance through processes perfected over generations of human ingenuity. These familiar tasks provide anchors of normality in circumstances that challenge every assumption about how the world operates. Yet even routine activities feel different when performed under the shadow of impossible possibilities.
The bread you need might feed people who will face threats that no medieval mind was prepared to comprehend. The coins you accept in payment might soon become worthless if society collapses under pressures that exceed human understanding or endurance. Your afternoon journey to the miller shop takes you past the city's outer defenses, where you discover unusual activity among the guards. Additional sentries patrol the walls, their attention focused outward rather than on the usual concerns about bandits or enemy armies. Their weapons include items you don't immediately recognize, blessed objects provided by clergy who apparently take the merchant's warnings more seriously than they publicly acknowledge. The miller himself seems unusually talkative, sharing information about defensive preparations being undertaken throughout Winchester's surrounding countryside. Farmers have begun burning their dead rather than burying them, despite religious objections to cremation. Village priests have started blessing weapons with holy water and conducting rituals designed to prevent corpses from rising again. These precautions strike you as simultaneously ridiculous and terrifying. If respected community leaders consider such measures necessary, perhaps the merchant's tales contain enough truth to justify extraordinary responses. Your practical nature rebels against accepting supernatural explanations, but your survival instincts recognize that preparation for unlikely threats often proves wise in dangerous times. The return journey reveals Winchester transforming in subtle but unmistakable ways. Households that survived the plague through careful isolation now seem to be preparing for different kinds of siege. Windows that were merely shuttered against disease-carrying air are being reinforced with additional timber. Doors that provided adequate security against human threats are being reinforced with iron bars and blessed symbols. Children's games have evolved to incorporate elements from the merchant's stories, though their parents try to discourage such activities. Young voices can be heard chanting rhymes about keeping the dead in their graves and protecting the living from unnatural hunger. These innocent adaptations of adult fears demonstrate how quickly communities adjust their cultural practices when faced with new categories of threat. Your evening meal takes place in an atmosphere charged with unspoken anxieties that transform familiar foods into reminders of mortality. The bread tastes the same, but eating it becomes an act of defiance against forces that might make future meals impossible. Each bite represents continued commitment to life and normalcy, despite circumstances that challenge both survival and sanity. Your father shares additional information gathered from customers throughout the day, carefully filtering details to protect Emma from the most disturbing possibilities. Reports describe organized expeditions being planned to investigate the truth behind the merchant's claims. Professional soldiers, experienced clergy, and knowledgeable scholars are combining their expertise to confront threats that no single discipline understands completely. The cathedral's evening bells carry additional significance tonight, their bronze voices calling faithful believers to special prayers designed to strengthen spiritual defenses against supernatural assault. The Latin words drift through Winchester streets like protective incantations, offering comfort to those who find security in religious ritual and divine protection. Your family's evening prayers acquire new urgency as you request protection not just from plague and earthly dangers, but also from threats that exist beyond normal human experience. The familiar words feel insufficient for circumstances that medieval theology struggles to address adequately. Yet speaking them aloud provides comfort that transcends their literal meaning, connecting your household to generations of believers who face their own impossible challenges. Sleep becomes more elusive as your mind processes implications of the day's revelations. Margaret's memories contain enough folklore about restless dead to make the merchant's stories seem plausible, while your modern understanding rebels against accepting explanations that violate natural laws. This internal conflict creates cognitive dissonance that makes rest difficult, despite physical exhaustion from intensive labor. The night sounds of Winchester carry additional layers of meaning as you listen for signs of unusual activity. Dogs bark with different urgency when sensing threats they cannot categorize. Cats behave strangely when confronting scents that trigger instinctive fears bred into their species over countless generations. Even rats seem more cautious in their nocturnal activities, as if sensing predators that operate according to unfamiliar rules. Your chamber feels simultaneously too small and too exposed as you contemplate threats that walls and doors might not effectively contain. The straw mattress that provided adequate comfort last night now seems inadequate protection against dangers that might not require physical entry to reach their victims. Your woolen blanket offers warmth, but little security against fears that penetrate deeper than cold air. Dawn arrives with the same reluctant pace that characterizes all activities in plague-ravaged Winchester. But today brings additional weight of uncertainty about what challenges the coming hours might reveal. The morning light filtering through dirty glass seems dimmer somehow, as if even the sun struggles to illuminate a world where natural and supernatural horrors compete for dominance over human affairs. Your morning routine acquires new significance as each familiar task becomes potentially the last time you perform it under circumstances that remain recognizably normal. Dressing in Margaret's woolen garments, descending the creaking stairs, lighting the ovens, and preparing dough all feel like acts of faith in the continuity of ordinary life despite extraordinary threats. The bakery's familiar smells of yeast and grain provide comfort that transcends their immediate sensory impact. These aromas connect your present circumstances to countless generations of bakers who face their own challenges while maintaining the essential human activity of transforming raw materials into sustenance. Their persistence through previous disasters offers hope for surviving current impossibilities. Your father's movements show the careful deliberation of someone who has decided to maintain normal routines, regardless of circumstances beyond his control. His weathered hands kneaded dough with the same practiced efficiency that sustained your family through the plague's worst periods. This determination to continue essential work provides stability that helps anchor your household against forces that threaten to sweep away everything.
Conventional tactics cannot address. Voices chant prayers in languages both familiar and ancient, seeking divine intervention against threats that human wisdom cannot fully comprehend. The morning progresses with the relentless efficiency that characterizes medieval life, each hour bringing tasks that must be completed regardless of external circumstances. Bread must be baked, customers must be served, and families must be fed. Even when the world seems balanced on the edge of incomprehensible transformation, these obligations provide structure that helps maintain sanity during periods when reality itself appears subject to fundamental alteration. Your hands shape loaves with automatic precision while your mind grapples with possibilities that stretch the boundaries of believable experience. Each piece of dough represents continued commitment to feeding people who might face challenges that no amount of nourishment can address effectively. Yet, the act of creation remains meaningful, even when its ultimate purpose becomes questionable. The heat from multiple ovens creates an environment that feels increasingly oppressive as anxiety compounds physical discomfort. Sweat drips steadily despite the early hour. Your body is responding to stress that exceeds normal reactions to temperature and exertion. The woolen dress clings uncomfortably while providing essential protection against burns from equipment that operates according to principles more reliable than human judgment. Emma's assistance proves invaluable as you struggle to maintain productivity despite distraction from circumstances that demand constant attention to potential threats. Her youthful energy provides essential support for completing tasks that require sustained focus, even when concentration becomes difficult to maintain. Yet you notice signs of strain in her pale face that concern you more than your own physical discomfort. The morning's bread emerges from ovens with the same golden perfection that has characterized your family's work for generations, but today, each loaf feels like a small miracle accomplished despite impossible odds. Their familiar aroma provides comfort that transcends immediate circumstances, connecting present struggles to the continuity of human persistence through countless previous disasters. Customers continue arriving throughout the morning, their faces reflecting the same mixture of determination and fear that marks all survivors who refuse to surrender hope despite overwhelming challenges. Their conversations reveal a community mobilizing resources to confront threats that exceed individual capabilities while maintaining essential activities that sustain collective survival. Each transaction becomes an act of mutual support that strengthens bonds between people facing unprecedented dangers together. Your midday meal consists of hard cheese and yesterday's bread, consumed while standing beside the ovens to maintain their heat for the afternoon's baking. The simple food tastes different today, each bite carrying the weight of uncertainty about how many more such meals you might share with your family. Emma sits quietly nearby, her young face etched with worries that no 13-year-old should bear. The afternoon brings disturbing news from your customers. Old Henrik, the cobbler, whose shop sits near the city gates, reports seeing strange lights moving beyond Winchester's walls during the previous night. His weathered hands shake as he describes pale flames that danced above the ground, without any apparent source, moving in patterns that suggested intelligence rather than natural phenomena. Other patrons share similar accounts. The blacksmith's wife speaks of her chickens refusing to leave their coop, huddling together and making sounds she's never heard before. The tavern keeper mentions that his ale has begun souring faster than normal, developing an unpleasant metallic taste that makes even desperate customers reject their drinks. These seemingly unrelated incidents begin forming a pattern that chills your blood more effectively than Winchester's autumn air. Animals possess instincts that humans have forgotten, and their collective agitation suggests threats that your rational mind struggles to accept. The merchant's tales no longer seem like distant folklore, but immediate warnings about dangers approaching your community. Your father maintains his stoic demeanor while serving customers, but you catch him glancing repeatedly toward the shuttered windows as if expecting unwelcome visitors. His military service years ago taught him to recognize when circumstances shift from merely dangerous to genuinely catastrophic. The subtle changes in his posture and movements signal preparations for conflicts that conventional weapons might not resolve. The afternoon's flower delivery requires another journey through Winchester's increasingly tense streets. Your route takes you past the monastery, where you observe unusual activity among the brown-robed brothers. They're constructing additional barriers around their walls, not the simple fortifications designed to deter human raiders, but elaborate arrangements of blessed symbols and consecrated materials. Brother Francis, whom you've known since childhood, acknowledges your passing with a grave nod that confirms your worst suspicions. The church's response to the merchant's warnings extends beyond mere precaution into active preparation for supernatural warfare. Holy water is being prepared in unprecedented quantities, while ancient texts are being consulted for rituals long forgotten in more peaceful times. The miller's establishment shows similar signs of unusual preparation. Additional guards patrol the perimeter, their weapons gleaming with fresh applications of blessed oil. The great wheel continues its eternal rotation, grinding grain with mechanical persistence that provides reassurance about some things remaining constant despite extraordinary circumstances. Your transaction with the miller proceeds with the formal courtesy that has replaced casual conversation in these dangerous times. He weighs your flour with extra care, as if precise measurement might provide protection against imprecise threats. His eyes frequently dart toward the horizon, scanning for signs of approaching danger that conventional watchtowers might not detect. The return journey reveals Winchester's transformation accelerating beyond recognition. Households that survived the plague through careful isolation now implement additional protective measures designed for different categories of threat. Doorways display newly carved symbols whose meanings escape your understanding, but whose purpose seems clear enough. Children have disappeared entirely from the streets, their families keeping them safely indoors, despite the psychological costs of such confinement. The few adults you encounter move with the purposeful haste of people conducting essential business while minimizing exposure to unknown dangers. Conversations occur in whispers, as if speaking loudly might attract unwanted attention from listeners who shouldn't exist. The bakery feels like a sanctuary when you finally return. Its familiar warmth and comforting aromas provide temporary refuge from mounting anxieties. Yet even this safe space cannot entirely exclude the growing sense that Winchester itself might become undefensible against threats that operate according to rules no human authority understands or controls. Evening preparations for tomorrow's bread acquire additional significance as you realize that maintaining normal routines might become impossible if the merchant's warnings prove accurate. Each batch of dough prepared tonight could be the last produced under circumstances that remain recognizably ordinary. Your hands work automatically while your mind contemplates scenarios that challenge every assumption about survival and continuity. The heat from banked ovens feels more oppressive tonight, perhaps because anxiety amplifies every physical discomfort. Your woolen dress clings uncomfortably to skin damped with perspiration that reflects stress more than temperature. The familiar tasks of measuring ingredients and preparing workspace become more difficult when performed under emotional pressure that exceeds normal concerns about business success. Emma's assistance proves essential as you struggle to maintain focus despite distractions that seem to multiply with each passing hour. Her steady presence provides anchoring that helps counteract the disorienting effects of contemplating possibilities that exist beyond normal experience. Yet you notice how her hands tremble slightly when handling delicate work, revealing that she too feels the weight of approaching crisis. Your father shares information gathered from afternoon customers, carefully filtering details to protect Emma while ensuring that your family remains informed about developing situations. Reports describe organized patrols being established throughout Winchester's surrounding countryside, combining professional soldiers with clergy experienced in confronting supernatural threats. These defensive preparations strike you as simultaneously reassuring and terrifying. If respected authorities consider such measures necessary, the merchant's tales must contain sufficient truth to justify extraordinary responses. Your practical nature rebels against accepting supernatural explanations, but survival instincts recognize that preparation often determines outcomes when facing unknown dangers. The evening's bread emerges from ovens with the same golden perfection that has characterized your family's work throughout the plague years. But tonight, each loaf feels like a small miracle accomplished despite impossible odds.
Viewed directly, creating optical illusions that make your eyes water and your head ache. This newcomer speaks with authority born of witnessing events that defy conventional understanding. His voice carries across the square as he describes villages completely abandoned, their inhabitants vanished without trace or explanation. Homes stand empty, with meals still warm on tables, livestock wandering unattended, and churches whose bells ring themselves at midnight with no human hands to pull the ropes. More disturbing still are his accounts of travelers who encountered figures walking along country roads at impossible hours. These walkers move with purposeful determination despite bearing obvious signs of death. Their pale flesh is unmarked by decay, yet somehow wrong in ways that living eyes can immediately recognize. They seem drawn toward populated areas by hunger that ordinary food cannot satisfy. Your father emerges from the bakery's rear chamber, where he's been consulting the family's carefully hoarded silver coins, calculating whether your accumulated savings might purchase passage to distant relatives in regions not yet touched by these supernatural threats. His weathered face shows the strain of impossible decisions, weighing known dangers against unknown territories where survival might prove equally challenging. The stranger's testimony continues with descriptions of defensive measures attempted by various communities, most proving ineffective against enemies that operate according to unfamiliar rules. Walls that stopped human raiders offer no protection against beings that can pass through solid barriers. Weapons blessed by local clergy sometimes succeed in turning back supernatural attackers, but only when wielded by individuals whose faith remains absolutely pure and unwavering. Emma's pale face grows even whiter as she processes implications of the stranger's words. Her 13 years have already witnessed more death and suffering than most people encounter in entire lifetimes. Yet these new threats exceed even her expanded understanding of how cruel the world can become. Her small hand seeks yours, cold fingers grasping for comfort that you struggle to provide when your own courage wavers. The crowd's reaction reveals a community divided between those who accept the stranger's testimony as truth, requiring immediate action, and others who dismiss his accounts as elaborate fabrications designed to exploit vulnerable people during already difficult times. Arguments break out between neighbors who have survived plague years together, their unity fractured by disagreements about threats that conventional experience cannot evaluate. Your practical nature rebels against accepting explanations that violate natural laws, yet survival instincts recognize patterns in the stranger's descriptions that correlate with other disturbing reports circulating throughout Winchester. The accumulation of seemingly impossible accounts creates a weight of evidence that becomes difficult to dismiss entirely, even when individual stories seem too fantastical for rational acceptance. The afternoon's remaining customers reflect the community's growing polarization, as some purchase extra bread for extended journeys to safer territories, while others buy only their usual daily portions, refusing to alter established routines based on unverified rumors. These divergent responses reveal how differently people process information that challenges their fundamental assumptions about reality and survival. Your evening preparations for tomorrow's baking acquire additional significance as you contemplate the possibility that normal business operations might become impossible if supernatural threats materialize as described. Each batch of dough prepared tonight could represent the final opportunity to maintain familiar routines before circumstances force radical adaptations to survival strategies that no medieval person was prepared to implement. The heat from banked ovens feels more oppressive tonight, perhaps because emotional stress amplifies every physical discomfort. Your wool dress clings uncomfortably to skin damp with perspiration that reflects anxiety more than temperature. Simple tasks become more challenging when performed under psychological pressure that exceeds normal concerns about commercial success or family welfare. Emma's assistance proves essential as you struggle to maintain focus despite mental distractions that seem to multiply with each passing hour. Her steady presence provides emotional anchoring that helps counteract the disorienting effects of contemplating possibilities that exist beyond normal human experience. Yet you notice how her hands tremble when handling delicate work, revealing that she too feels the weight of approaching crisis. Your father shares additional information gathered from afternoon customers, carefully filtering details to protect Emma while ensuring your family remains informed about developing situations that might require immediate responses. Reports describe organized expeditions being planned to investigate the truth behind supernatural claims, combining professional soldiers with clergy experienced in confronting threats that conventional military training cannot address. These defensive preparations strike you as simultaneously reassuring and terrifying in their implications. If respected community authorities consider such extraordinary measures necessary, the stranger's testimony must contain sufficient truth to justify responses that would seem ridiculous under normal circumstances. Your rational mind struggles with concepts that violate established understanding, while survival instincts recognize patterns in the stranger's descriptions that correlate with other disturbing reports circulating throughout Winchester. The accumulation of seemingly impossible accounts creates a weight of evidence that becomes difficult to dismiss entirely, even when individual stories seem too fantastical for rational acceptance. The afternoon's remaining customers reflect the community's growing polarization, as some purchase extra bread for extended journeys to safer territories, while others buy only their usual daily portions, refusing to alter established routines based on unverified rumors. These divergent responses reveal how differently people process information that challenges their fundamental assumptions about reality and survival. Your evening preparations for tomorrow's baking acquire additional significance as you contemplate the possibility that normal business operations might become impossible if supernatural threats materialize as described. Each batch of dough prepared tonight could represent the final opportunity to maintain familiar routines before circumstances force radical adaptations to survival strategies that no medieval person was prepared to implement. The heat from banked ovens feels more oppressive tonight, perhaps because emotional stress amplifies every physical discomfort. Your wool dress clings uncomfortably to skin damp with perspiration that reflects anxiety more than temperature. Simple tasks become more challenging when performed under psychological pressure that exceeds normal concerns about commercial success or family welfare. Emma's assistance proves essential as you struggle to maintain focus despite mental distractions that seem to multiply with each passing hour. Her steady presence provides emotional anchoring that helps counteract the disorienting effects of contemplating possibilities that exist beyond normal human experience. Yet you notice how her hands tremble when handling delicate work, revealing that she too feels the wake of approaching crisis. Your father shares additional information gathered from afternoon customers, carefully filtering details to protect Emma while ensuring your family remains informed about developing situations that might require immediate responses. Reports describe organized expeditions being planned to investigate the truth behind supernatural claims, combining professional soldiers with clergy experienced in confronting threats that conventional military training cannot address. These defensive preparations strike you as simultaneously reassuring and terrifying in their implications. If respected community authorities consider such extraordinary measures necessary, the stranger's testimony must contain sufficient truth to justify responses that would seem ridiculous under normal circumstances. Your rational mind struggles with concepts that violate established understanding, while survival instincts recognize patterns in the stranger's descriptions that correlate with other disturbing reports circulating throughout Winchester. The accumulation of seemingly impossible accounts creates a weight of evidence that becomes difficult to dismiss entirely, even when individual stories seem too fantastical for rational acceptance. The afternoon's remaining customers reflect the community's growing polarization, as some purchase extra bread for extended journeys to safer territories, while others buy only their usual daily portions, refusing to alter established routines based on unverified rumors. These divergent responses reveal how differently people process information that challenges their fundamental assumptions about reality and survival. Your evening preparations for tomorrow's baking acquire additional significance as you contemplate the possibility that normal business operations